Is it easier to win an overseas Ashes in England or in Australia? Because neither team seem to be particularly good at it.
England.
It's much easier in England, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. They haven't won it since 2001.
Yeah, but they've drawn too.
Well, England have won one.
Yeah, England haven't won since.
No,
won
hang
a
on,
test
hang on,
match
hang on,
since
hang on.
10 11.
No. You misunderstand the question.
Well, you
I'm
didn't
not
ask
saying-
it right.
I'm not saying, looking back at the last 20 years, which team came closer. I'm talking about in terms of the country. Forget the personnel.
easier
Forget
winning
the
in
play.
It's much easier in England.
The ball lasts longer. The ball does a bit more off the pitch for longer.
So what skills do Australians learn that is better transferable to playing cricket in England than England players don't learn, and it's not transferable to play in Australia?
So the way I would put it is there are English conditions in New Zealand. There are times when the ball swings even in Australia and Tasmania and everywhere else. And there are times in South Africa where the conditions are similar to England. There really isn't anywhere else on earth where the conditions are similar to Australia, right?
Might be different this series.
No, this series the pitches might be more English in Australia than
So does that favour England or Australia? Anyway, we'll move
that
on.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But essentially, if you look at the history of the game, right? Like there was this whole thing. Australians always said we never doctor our pitches. I was like, we don't have to. Our pitches are pre-doctored. Like if you're like watch a Pakistani batter try and bat in Australia. Like they're just looking at this going, is there something wrong with this? Did someone put a trampoline on this pitch? It doesn't make any sense, right? Whereas if you come to England, a lot of Australian cricketers grow up in, with two-piece balls on synthetic wickets. They're used to the swinging ball, right? They might not be as good at it as an England or a New Zealand player is, but they're used to the ball swinging around. And so those skills are much different. And as Harmy said, there's that whole period in the middle of Australian games where it's unlike cricket kind of anywhere else on earth. The pitch gets flat. It's really, really hot. If the new ball doesn't do anything, you're in this really weird spot. You have to think about cricket in a completely different way. Or you have to be like Australians and be really, really disciplined for hours and hours on end.
See, that's a key point as well, isn't it? To become Australian class, to play for Australia, forget the personnel, right? But to get to that level, would you say it's more difficult than to get to the top level in England?
I would say it's probably more difficult in Australia. But
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So to get to the top in Australia, is it more difficult because you have to essentially you can't rely on the overheads or the pitch in the same way that you can here?
Yeah, you have to master every kind of part of the game. Like for instance, I would say you'd be better off to be a spinner in England certainly a finger spinner in England than you would be in Australia, right? Like I think that's probably something we'd agree. Like if it's just slightly better conditions, you get a little bit of drift and everything else, right? The ball stays a little bit harder. But in Australia, spinners actually are much used to bowling a lot more load of overs because there's more overs to bowl, and you can't bowl Harmy for 30 overs in Australia because he'll die, right? Like it's a flat pitch. You know he's got to come back tomorrow. In England, you're like, we might be able to squeeze him through today because we might not have to worry about coming back tomorrow. Australia, you do. So I think even the spinners bowl more in Australia, right? So I think it's a different kind of physical cricket than a lot of other players. It's almost like a combination of India with like South African pitches, where, a little bit of pace and carry that South Africa can have, not on all their wickets, but on some. But then you've got the Indian thing of going, we've got about an hour and a half on one day, and then we've got 4 days of trying to hope that we stay in the game, and then that the pitch collapses at the right time. So it's a very different kind of tempo than other cricket. Whereas in England or New Zealand, there's a lot of times where you're like, well, we might get cloud cover, it might get a little bit dark, right? The pitch might start seaming around. For days on end, traditionally in Australia, that doesn't happen. Right?
more predictable. The games are more predictable in Australia than they are in England. I think if you win the toss in Australia...
Yeah, there's nothing more depressing than Pakistan, Sri Lanka, not that they have it all, West Indies, New Zealand, losing the toss in Australia, and Australia
and it's
saying,
600,
we're going to have a bat.
Yeah.
The other thing as well is, England did win in 2010-11, and they stacked the team with, 6'10", right? So... Whereas I don't think I've ever heard Australia say, we're going to bring a type of bowler to England to win. You know, horses for courses in the same way.
don't
No,
think
they
they
used to do
needed
the Alderman thing, didn't they?
Yeah, I don't think they've
Is that
needed to.
physically wise?
They haven't really needed to. If you look at
But could you imagine that ever being a situation, or do you think they'll just say, well, we just
Not
pick our
physically,
best
but
bowlers?
I think you're wrong. I think if you go back and you look at most Australian squads, there is an Alderman, Massey, maybe even Merv Hughes.
You're going back a long way, though.
But Chad Sayers, Jackson Bird, those guys were suggested as potentials. They just had better options, I think.
Nisa
around.
was another one that went and played at Glamorgan and then played.
Yes.
played
So I think they've thought about that bowler, but over the years, what Australian cricket has done through professionalism, and Army's talked about this before, is as fast bowlers have got more accurate, they've probably also got more skillful, right? So someone like Cummins in a previous generation would probably just be right arm fast, whereas actually Cummins is highly skillful. So I think what Australia started to do was go, yeah, we could pick Fergus O'Neill and Trent Copeland type bowlers, which England would pick, right? And they're like, no, what we'd rather do is pick the faster bowler and teach them the skills, right? So that when they go in those places, they can still do things. So it's easier. I think Australia believes that you pick the fastest bowlers and make them skillful. So they don't always stay fast. Josh Hazlewood can bowl well over 90 miles an hour and almost never does, right? Pat Cummins used to bowl at 95 miles an hour, and it would be, I think there was a joke recently that he bowled faster than Mitchell Starc. Mitchell Starc stopped the press conference to be like, are you guys sure you saw the speedo correctly? Right? So he's slowed down so much. So I think in Australia, that's what you try and do. So you don't go back to that old Terry Alderman, Bob Massey style anymore. But for generations, you're just too young, John, and you won't hear that very often.
You're going back
Thank
to
you, Jarrod.
Terry
That's
Alderman,
why I bring you in.
yeah, McDermott, Hughes and all that.
Yeah, Rifle was another guy.
Since then, they've had two generational bowling attacks. They've had Warne, McGrath, Gillespie, Lee, Bickle. Trying to think of who else was playing around that.
Kasperwitz,
Fleming.
it
all
was
around
ridiculous.
that sort of mid to late 90s into the mid 2000s.
And then you had Stuart Clark.
Yeah, but then you've had this lot for the last 100 Test matches.
Okay, so we talked a lot about the bowlers.
Who are the best in all conditions.
We talked a lot about the bowlers, right?
Just to add to what he just said, if you've got Cummins, Hazlewood, McGrath and Gillespie, right, you don't need to pick an Alderman-like figure.
No.
Because they can travel
That's what I'm
everywhere.
saying, you've got
Whereas
two.
England seamers don't travel as much. McGrath bowled great everywhere he went, right?
Yeah. The other thing is, let's talk about the batting. Well, there's two other things I want to talk about. First off, you never ever see an English player in Sheffield Shield, right?
Paul Collingwood almost got picked for Victoria. Did you know that?
I did. And
Because I told you.
You did. And, I mean, you see a lot of Australian players playing in the county championship. So say that flipped round and you never saw Australians play in domestic cricket in this country, but you saw them everywhere in Sheffield Shield cricket, English. Would that make a difference?
Yeah, I think over a period of time it would make a difference. I think the big advantage Australia has, it'd be interesting to see what Harmy says, but I think when it comes to batting is, Australians are used to playing on surfaces where they trust. So the techniques are based on that. And so, like, people like Ricky Ponting start playing, and a lot of guys start playing on synthetic wickets, right? You don't have to worry about shooters on synthetic wickets, and you don't have to worry about smothering the ball on a synthetic wicket. You just trust your eye and you do that, and then you get on a hard wicket in Brisbane or in Adelaide, and again you're trusting it. I play club cricket over here. The wickets are terrible. Like, you can't bat like a normal person. Every ground I turn up to, I have to come up with a new technique to handle the wicket. So I don't think you can change that about English cricket over a short period of time. That's probably something that takes a long period of time. So I don't think just playing Shield cricket would help in that sort of one. But it would help with the thing we were talking about before, which is that sort of knowing that Australian cricket has a different tempo and understanding that there is something else. And then also, it'd help with the hands, wouldn't it? Of English players quite often just have lower hands, and that doesn't work.
A bit like the question you said before, which is it harder to win an Ashes series in Australia or in England? And it's in England, and that's why Australian players come across here to practice. The moving ball, talking about the leaving outside of stump, smothering the bounce, low hand. In Australia, it bounces probably 2-3 inches more than what it does in England, and I think that's the conundrum all the time when you go over to Australia. In preparation, I think that's why Graham Gooch is saying what he's doing. Ian Botham saying what they're doing, not having the preparation time. And it's largely down to the fact there are little minute little things, which is the bounce of the ball makes a massive difference. And if you don't quite get it right, you become unstuck at the start of the tour, and then by the end of the tour, I mean, the pressure that's come under from that. How many times you see Ricky Ponting get 100 in the first Test match at Brisbane, and we've got no idea how to bowl to him by the end of it.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you nick them off in the first couple of tours, first couple of games, and the pressure that goes on throughout the series. So for me, if you had more English players playing in Shield cricket, it would help to an extent. But all it would be doing is training the brain and the ball bouncing from a batting point of view. From a bowling point of view, it'll be that length is a little bit fuller. That length is a little bit fuller, and you have to get, as much as you have to bowl fuller in England, you have to bowl full in Australia. You do, because if you bowl that little back of a length short stuff, you just get cut and pulled, especially from my point of view, from tall bowler's point of view.
Yeah, definitely from tall bowler. Yeah, there's probably a technical thing here as well, which is this is less now because techniques are a bit more global than they used to be, right? But traditionally, England players are forward press players, right? Because of what we were saying before, the ball keeps a little bit lower. And you're trying to smother the moving ball. Whereas Australian players generally stay more in their crease, right, and watch the ball late. If you're an Australian player who comes to England, staying in the crease and watching the ball late actually still works for you a bit when the ball's moving around. Whereas if you're in England and you go to Australia and you try the forward press, it doesn't make any sense. Like you're almost doubling your chance of getting an edge because you're in the wrong position, and so you're going to get an edge on lateral movement, but also on bounce. And so I do think there's just like little technical things that have helped certain countries. I always thought one of the reasons that West Indies did so well in the period that they did is no one was playing global cricket, right? But they were playing in England, sometimes South Africa, sometimes Australia, all these different places. But also, when you went to the West Indies, you had one wicket in Guyana, which was basically Dubai. Then you had Sabina Park, which was basically the Wacker, right? Then you had another wicket with grass, another one that was flat. They had natural wickets, whereas countries that I think have more the same wicket over and over again maybe don't have the advantages when they tour from place to place.
And
there was one other thing as well, that there would be players in every single West Indies side that felt like they were playing away. So even when they were playing at home, they had the fans in on their back saying, why are you in the side instead of our man?
So they're always touring, right?
And as well, if you've got English players playing Sheffield Shield, the psychological side of it, knowing that, and it's just a minute little thing, but I think it's massive when it comes to just the way people talk about it. If you've got an English player in an Australian side, he's classed as he's your professional. Yeah. He's classed as your marquee man. And if he scores runs, all of a sudden, this person's put on a pedestal. The West Indians were brilliant. They had a barrage of fast bowlers in the 70s and 80s. And why did we know about them? Because they play in England. They were all playing England as overseas players. They're all as professional. So Marnus Labuschagne is probably the prime example. He came in for Steve Smith. We all knew Marnus Labuschagne because he scored loads and loads of runs for Glamorgan.
Yeah, he was almost picked on the back of that.
Off the back of that. Yeah. So them playing in English cricket, we put them on a pedestal. Now they're not put on a pedestal at home. And one of the, another big example is we had Simon Cattage as a 20-year-old. We had Martin Love as a 21, 22-year-old at Durham. Booney, when Booney was there. When Shane Warne came to town, not when Booney was there, but when Shane Warne came to town for Hampshire, all the Australians just tried to slog him out of the park. They just tried to smash him. And in Sheffield Shield cricket, Warney got smashed. Not in Test match cricket, because everybody's seen Warney as this great lead figure. Now, if you've got English players put on a pedestal in an Australian dressing room, all of a sudden the narrative changes a little bit. And I think because we've got 18 teams and we can have 2 overseas players and we can have an Australian who probably isn't as good as one of our fast bowlers, but because he's our professional, in inverted commas, we put him on a pedestal. We think he's the best thing since sliced bread. So I think there's a mentality shift towards Australians being put on a higher level than it is on England, because
that whole professional thing's really interesting, isn't it? Who's the last English player to play county cricket? Do you guys know?
Who's the last what? Sorry,
English player to play. Yeah, Shield cricket. Sorry.
Hickey won it.
Yeah, I think it's Hick. I don't think so. Matt Pryor played for Victoria in 50-over cricket, I reckon, because he was over to play like the old Big Bash League, but I don't think he played in.
David Boone wanted me to go to Tasmania in '99, but I got picked on an air tour to play in that.
It might be someone in Tasmania. I'm trying to think.
Dan Worrell.
It really, well, I mean, it would be. It's people like that who
it'd be Hickey or Beefy. Hickey and Beefy both.
Beefy would have been before Hick.
Yeah.
I can't think of many others. There really aren't a lot. So Andy Flower did it. Yunus Khan did it. I'm trying to think, because in the old days you get a couple. I think Wes Hall, Imran Khan, but there haven't been that many overseas players in the history of.
No, I can't even think of any.
Yeah. I think I've named most of them there.
Hickey was the last one I
Vic Marks. When would Vic Marks have played for Western Australia?
It would have been before Hickey.
Yeah. So it would have been both of them.
Same time as both of them.
Well, 80s then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There wouldn't have been. That's what I mean. I could probably name you another 5 if you give me a minute. But there aren't many overseas players in the entire.
I don't think Hickey played in Brisbane while playing for England. I think he was playing for.
You think he was finished by then?
No. I think he played for Brisbane before he qualified.
Oh, you're right. Actually,
I think
but he was definitely a county player though.
Yeah, he was playing for Worcester. But I don't think the reason why he went across there is because he wasn't playing for England because he hadn't qualified yet.
I'm trying to think if he went back again later as well. But yeah, anyway, it shows you how few players ever have. We talked about Paul Collingwood before. He had a great year in Victorian cricket and no one was making runs and everyone was like, should we pick him? And Abdul Qadir played at like 50 in club cricket and took like 1,000 wickets and almost got a game. But Victoria had a rule of like, no, we don't do overseas.
2002, I think it was. 2001, 2002 when Collie was there.
Yeah. And they just had a rule of like, we just don't do it, right? South Australia have always been a little bit different. Western Australia and Queensland have had some as well. But Victoria and New South Wales have been very anti it the whole way through. It's just how it is. Johan Botha might have done it. Does he count as a county player?
He became Australian, didn't he?
He is Australian, I think. Yeah.